So it's good practice to always define a main function. In most programs, there's a starting point. The main function is the function that calls every other function. It's the starting point of your program. So let's, in most program languages, that's required. Let's go ahead and do that over here too. Let's define a function called main. It doesn't accept in any argument, so we're not going to go ahead and define any parameters. So the function main, in the function main, the first thing we want to do is we want to call the display numbers, the display numbers function. So display numbers, and the way we define display numbers, we define it in such a way that it's going to accept in the file to be read. In our case, in this particular program, random number file reader, we have the folder here, random number file reader. We want to read from this file. So this is the name of the file we have to provide to this display numbers. That's what I meant by file to be read. You can call it file name to be read, just so it makes sense to you. But this is what I mean when I say file to be read. I mean the file name of the file we are going to read the random numbers from. In this case, it's called randomnumbers.txt. So as a string, I'm going to pass in, because it's a string, right? It's just the name of the file, so it's a string. Randomnumbers.txt. That's the name of the file I'm going to display to this. Again, once we run the program, when we run the program, nothing will happen because these two are both functions, and we've only defined them. We haven't done anything. For us to really see anything, we have to go ahead and call the main function, because the main function is the function that calls every other function. I'm going to call the main function by its name over here. Let's just shift this a little bit down. I'm going to call the main function by its name, and let's see what happens. So run this, and we can see that this program is actually displaying all the numbers in the file. If we come back here and we open our file, we can see that these are the numbers in here: 198, 305, 202, 451. We can see that they're the same, right? So that means that our program is working. It's reading a line. It's checking to make sure it's not empty. So it reads 198, 198. It was able to read something, so it's not empty. It converts, because 198 will be a string, okay, stored in line. That's the very first time. We are checking to see if line is not empty. It's not empty. We convert 198 to a number, in this case an int, and we are storing it in random number, and we are printing it out. So it prints out 198. And then we call read line again from this file, okay, because once you read 198, the read position will be adjusted to the beginning of this line. When we call read line again over here, it reads 305, and then 305 will be stored in line. It checks, the while loop checks to see if it was able to read something, if whatever is stored in line is not empty. It's true, because it's not empty because it was able to read 305 in there. It converts 305 from a string to a number, in this case an int, because whatever is read from the file using read line is returned as a string initially. So we are converting it to an int, and we are printing it out, and we call read line again to read the next line, and so on and so forth. So I hope this makes sense. All right, so we've made some progress. All right, so we've displayed the numbers, and the program also goes ahead to say, the question goes ahead to say that we should display the following data, the total numbers. All right, so first of all, let's go ahead and create a variable that's going to keep track of the total of all the numbers, right? It's going to be a variable that's going to keep track of the total of all the numbers. So I'm going to come up here above the while loop, outside the while loop, even before we declare this line here, and I'm going to declare a variable. I'm going to call it total. And I'm going to set it initially to 0, because once we start our program, total is 0. We are going to accumulate, we are going to add to this variable, and to keep track of our total. Yeah, counting we're adding up all the numbers and all the random numbers in the file, and then getting the total. And total is going to store that. So over here, when we read a line from the file, right? When we read a line from a file, we check to make sure that number is not empty. Right, so we check to make sure that line is not empty. If that line is not empty, that means we were able to read something. We were able to read a number. So that number will be stored in line, but we have to convert it to a number first before we can do any addition or any math with it. So we do that. We convert it to a number, and we store it in this variable random number. So if at this point, if the program is able to get to this line here, random number will hold that particular number on that particular line. So we will have a number here. So let's go ahead and add that number to total, because we want to count. If we're able to read something from the file, let's go ahead and first of all add it to total. and then before we move on. So total, okay, is going to be equal to what's already stored in total plus random number. Okay, we are adding to what's already stored in total plus random number. So initially, total will be 0. So total is going to be equal to what's already stored in total, which is 0 plus, in this case, the very first number in the file, 198. So it's going to be 0 plus 198. 0 plus 198 gives you 198, and 198 will be assigned to total. So if we manage to, let's say, read the next line, which is 305, we know total contains 198. So it will be, total is going to be equal to 198, assuming we've read 305. It's going to be equal to 198 plus 305, and then that sum is going to be added back to total. Okay, so I hope it makes sense. So this is where we want to do the addition. If we're able to make sure that the line is not equal to an empty string, and if we're able to make sure it contains something, then convert it to a number and add it to total. Each time, let's accumulate it to total. Now, this line here can be written in a shortcut version, right? Total is equal to total plus random number. You can write it, it's the same as total plus equal random number. What this means is we are increasing total by random number. Or you can also read it this way. You can also read it this way. Total is being increased. That's the same thing. Or you can also read it this way. What is being added, okay, to total is random number. All right. So two ways. We are increasing total by random number. Okay. Or what is being added to total, okay, is equal to random number. All right. This is just an analogy to help you understand it. But this is a shortcut version. You can also leave it the other way, the long way. It works both ways. All right. So when we are done with this loop here, total, this variable total will hold our total value. And once we are done outside a loop, okay, not inside a loop, because inside a loop is when it's basically reading the line and doing all the math. When the loop is done outside a loop, that's when we want to go ahead and display the total. So let's go ahead and print a message and say that the total of all the numbers in the file is, let's go ahead and concatenate. We can pass it in the print function as separate arguments, but let's go ahead and concatenate what's stored in total to this string here. Okay, so the total of all numbers in the file is total, but the thing is, total contains a number. This is a string. When you try to concatenate a number to a string, Python is going to complain and say that it cannot go ahead and it cannot convert this total to a string by itself, which means we have to do it ourselves. And the way we convert this to a string is we surround it with a str function, str, around what we want to convert to a string, which means that now we have a string here, now we have another string here. We are just concatenating two strings, so we don't have a problem. We are converting what's stored in total to a string. So let's try this and see what we have so far. So run, and it says the total of all the numbers in the file is 1214. I needed to put space here, so I'll do just that. The total of all the numbers in the file is 1214. Hopefully it matches up. Hopefully it matches up. All right. Actually, let's okay, so it's fine. So now we are done with displaying all the numbers in the file. We are done with displaying the total of the numbers. Let's go ahead and also display the number of random numbers read from the file. All right, so how do we do that? So again, using this loop, if we're able to make sure that this line, if we're able to first of all read a line, if initially we read a line from the file, and then before we kick in the while loop, read the first line. If we're able to make sure that at any time line is not equal to an empty string, that means line contains something. That means we've been able to read something. And if we've been able to read something, then that means we've read a line, right? So we have to kind of start counting from there. So first of all, I'm going to declare a variable that's going to store the number of random numbers. So I'm going to call it number of random numbers here. And I'm going to set it equal to 0, right? Again, initially once we start our program, the number of random numbers in the file, we don't know. Like, we don't know. Let's say we have a file that we don't know the content of. We wouldn't know. We set it to 0 because we're about to count. So anytime we read a line and what's stored in that line is not equal to an empty string, is what's stored in that line is not empty, that means it contains something. That means we've been able to read something. And so at any time we've been able to read something, let's go ahead and increase number of random numbers by 1. All right, so number of random numbers, just like when we were doing the total here, number of random numbers is going to be equal to what's already stored in number of random numbers plus 1. Okay, each time we make sure that what's stored in line is not equal to an empty string, that means we've been able to read something. So let's add 1 to number of random numbers, right? So we are adding. So what's already stored in number of random numbers? Sorry. Number of random numbers is going to be equal to what's already stored in number of random numbers plus 1. So if random numbers was initially 0, it will be 0 plus 1. Over here, if we're able to read something, number of random numbers, okay, which is 0 plus 1. And 0 plus 1 gives you 1, and 1 will be stored in number of random numbers. And so number of randoms will store 1. If we're able to read another line, we know 1 will be stored in number of random numbers, so it's going to be 1 plus 1, which is 2. Basically, each time we are adding 1 to what's already stored in number of random numbers. And so the same way, this long line here, which is not too long, okay, you can write it in a shortcut version. Okay, number of random numbers is equal to number of random plus 1 can be written as number of random numbers plus equals 1. Again, same idea. We are increasing. Okay, we are increasing number of random numbers, okay, by 1. Okay, or we can say 1 is being added to number of random numbers, if it makes sense, if it helps that way. All right, so by the time we are done with this while loop, number of random numbers will hold how many random numbers we're able to read from this file. Okay, in this case, we are dealing with 5 numbers, so we can add to our print function over here. I'm going to now pass as a second argument, so this whole argument, line here becomes our one argument in the print function. I'm going to pass in another argument, and I'm going to say that let's see, should I actually do that? Because by default, when you separate arguments in the print function, it separates them with a space, and I don't want that on the next line. So let's see. Actually, I won't do that. I'll go ahead and I'll create one whole string, and I'll concatenate them all. Because this is a string, I can concatenate it with another string. So the total of all numbers in the file is a total which is converted to a string, and I'm going to concatenate that to another string, saying that there are. Let's concatenate that to the value of the value of number of random numbers. So there are number of random numbers, but because this is a number, we have to convert it to a string ourselves. Otherwise, Python will complain and say that it can't do it by itself. So I'm going to convert everything stored in number of random numbers here to a string. So there are number of random numbers. Okay, I'm going to concatenate it with another string and say in the file. All right, so we know that we are exceeding this line over here. Now this line over here, it's gray, I don't know if you can see it. This is a guideline for me to type or write 80 characters on a line. Now it's a Python standard to write 80 characters on a line, so and I want to follow that standard. So over here I'm exceeding 80 characters. If you count all the characters here on this line, including the spaces, it's around 80 characters. So I'm going to break the line somewhere around here, and when you break any line in Python, you have to type in the backslash and hit enter. So I've broken the 2 lines. It's still the same line, I've just broken it so that I can read it, I can see it. All right, so let's run this and see what happens. All right, the total of all the numbers in the file is 1214 there. So this is kind of mashed together over here. So we want to separate it. Actually, let's break this in another line, so that this line over here, there are five numbers. I meant to say. Let's break that on the next line. So right here there are 5. Okay, this will be the number of random numbers. let's go ahead and add a new line character, \n. Right, so the new line character, which is a \n, will basically move the position, okay, from here, because we put it right in front of the T, right in front of this whole line here. So right before the T, it's going to move the position from here to the next line. The new line character is like a line break. It will break the line from where it's at to the next line. And anything that comes after the new line character will be displayed from that line going. All right, so that's a line break. Okay, create a new line. You can think of it that way. So because it's there now, it's going to move the position from here to the next line, and anything that comes after the new line character will be displayed from this line going. So I'm going to run it, and we can see that it's been broken to the next line. I meant to type there are number of random numbers. Okay, numbers. Have a space here in the file. We're exceeding this line again, so let's break it somewhere around here. Before you break any line, you type in a / and hit enter. So I've broken the line into 3 different lines, but it's still the same line. I just don't want to exceed this line over here. Let's run this. So when I run it, now says there are 5 numbers in the file, and it's true. Now these are the numbers, and these are the 2 statements. I want to kind of separate them with another line break. So just like we had this new line character, right after the numbers are displayed, right before the total of all the numbers message, the string, let's go ahead and create another new line character here. So I'm going to type in another \n, which is going to create a new line character, which means that right before the string, it's going to move the position from where it's at to the next line, and anything that comes after that new line character will be displayed on that line going. So when I run this, we can see that because of this new line character, it moved the position from here to the next line, and anything that came after that new line character was displayed from that line going. All right, so this looks good. We can open our file and actually see. We can see these are the numbers in here. It's true, there are 5 numbers in the file. The total of all the numbers in the file is 1214. I haven't done the math, but I'm sure it's correct. Hopefully it's correct. I'm sure it's correct. Now we can go into the file and actually manipulate the file, change the numbers ourselves to see if this program actually works. Or if you want, you can use the previous program, the program number 7, to generate another series of random numbers. Copy that file, paste it in the new folder that contains the random number file reader, the Py program, and then read from that file. You can do that. Or even in the previous program, which is the number 7 program, you can write the file in such a way. You can write the file in such a way that it saves it here. It saves it in this folder directly. You can kind of mix it up, but just to test things out. Let's kind of stick with the question. So I'm going to actually go in this new folder which contains our random numbers.txt, and I'm going to delete it, right? Just so we can have new test data. And I'm going to open the recent folder, a recent file here. Let's see, is there an open recent? All right, let's use open, and let's open. I don't know why it's not opening. Let's see, file, open. All right, so let's open random number file writer, which is chapter 6. Random number file writer, and let's use this random number file writer to generate a file. Right. So when we run this program, it says how many random numbers, how many numbers should a random file hold. Let's create 3 numbers and hit enter, and it says 3 numbers have been written to the file random numbers.txt. So we have to go to this folder, the folder that contains random number file writer, which is the previous program, not this current program. So Python Programming Challenges chapter 6, random number file writer, which contains 6 numbers. The 3 new numbers here. All right, so 207, 144, and 253. And we can make a copy of that. Go to our new program. I know you can do this by yourself, but I'm just trying to kind of use the old program to create a new file. That's kind of what the question is asking, just so you can have a better sense of it. But you can kind of manipulate the file yourself. So chapter 6, random number file reader. Paste this file here. Now we have 3 numbers in this file. Let's run this. Now we have the random number file writer. We don't need that. We want our random number file reader. We have a new file in there with 3 numbers. Let's run it. See, there are those 3 numbers in there. So there are 3 numbers in here: 207, 144, and 253. It reads those. Sorry, let's adjust things a little bit here. It reads those and it adds them up. The total of all the numbers in the file is 604, right? So if we test this out, right, 207 plus 144 plus 253, and you can see that it's equal to 604. So it's adding it up, right? And it says there are 3 numbers in the file because there are 3 numbers in the file. So the program is actually working correctly. So we're done with this. The program said display the numbers and then display the following data: the total of the numbers, which we have here, and then the number of random numbers read from the file, which is 3.